Oktoberfest time is here, and there's nothing like washing down a crisp lager with a soft, salty, delicious pretzel. I just finished brewing some beer and have some leftover spent grains, so I thought, why not make some pretzels using the grains, just in time for Oktoberfest.
Boy, these pretzels are making me thirsty.
Outside of the beer, one of my favorite parts about going to Oktoberfest was trying the pretzels. Arguably some of the best soft pretzels in the world. Now mine aren't the same as the classic Bavarian variety, but these spent grain pretzels are chewy and loaded with flavor. It did take me a few times baking these to get the recipe right, and I'll talk about some of the tweaks I made along the way, so you can make the best pretzel possible. Alright, let's jump into the recipe. Here's what you'll need. Spent beer grains, fresh and still wet, since the wetness will impact the overall moisture level of the dough. If you're brewing and want to save your grains, I've been storing some in an airtight container in the freezer and it lasts for several weeks. Also, I would recommend going for a lighter malt bill with these, but I'll show you later how a darker grain bill can impact the color and flavor. You'll also need water, flour, any kind you like, but I recommend using all-purpose. Wheat flour can add to the density, and the grains add plenty of toothsomeness. Your favorite butter, melted, a little bit of brown sugar, salt, sea salt or kosher, baker's yeast, 1 packet or about 8 grams, and a splash of olive oil. First up, we need to get the yeast activated. Start by adding 4 tablespoons of melted butter to a large bowl. Then pour in a half cup of water, a tablespoon of brown sugar, and add in the yeast. Whisk that and allow the yeast to wake up, about 5 to 10 minutes. Once you see good activity, add in 1 cup of wet grains. Then add in about 1.5 cups of flour. It helps to add a little bit at a time as you mix. Lastly, add in 1.5 teaspoons of salt and keep mixing. Depending on how wet or dry your grains are, you may need to add more water or flour to get the texture right. If it's too wet, add a small bit of flour until it starts to form a ball, at which point you can switch to kneading on a lightly floured surface until it really comes together and the dough smooths out. Honestly, if you have a stand mixer, then use it with a dough hook for about 5 to 10 minutes until the dough is smooth. You really can't overdo the kneading here, so don't hold back. Then toss it in a lightly oiled bowl and cover with a damp hand cloth. Give it about 1.5 hours to rest in a warm spot until the dough doubles in size. Inside the oven with the oven off and the light on works perfect as a proofing area. After 1.5 hours, take out the dough. It should look something like this. Then punch it down. This releases some of the gases. You can now start forming some balls that will become the pretzels. The shape and size really depends on you. I found that I can get about 4 normal sized pretzels out of this dough. Or you can try to make buns, or even a bunch of small pretzel bites. But for now, just rough out the size and create a ball with the dough, pulling slightly on the dough to stretch it and create a tight ball. This will help with getting a smooth surface on the bake later. Cover your balls and let them rest for 15 minutes. Okay, now we can shape the pretzels. I'm by no means a professional pretzel twister, so I'm going to do a fairly simple twist. Start by taking one of your balls and rolling it out into a rope. Press and roll from the center out, keeping the middle a little more fat and tapering out to a thinner rope on the ends. When you feel like it's a good length, then you can make the twist. The easy way to do it is to lift up the ends, cross them over, and then flip them back down over like this. It can take a bit of practice, but just keep trying. Eventually, you can do it faster. Buns are pretty easy. Just roll out the shape you want, like this for sausages. And pretzel bites are the easiest. Just make small balls. You can try to make big pretzels like they have at Oktoberfest, but it's a bit harder to manage compared to the smaller size. I like to put the pretzel dough on parchment paper for the final rest. It'll help when it comes to the next step. Now just cover these up again to rest one last time. Once they're covered, let's preheat the oven to 400 degrees. Also fill a large pot halfway with water and bring to a boil. Pretzels are baked using a 2-step process. First, a quick 30-second boil in an alkali mixture, and then baked in the oven. The boiling contributes to the chewy outside texture and the browning of the pretzel. Traditionally in Germany, they use a lye water mixture to boil the pretzels. Lye is a strong caustic that can actually burn you if you're not careful. So please use extreme care if you go that route. But it's my recommendation to use good old baking soda. It won't be the exact same, but you'll be surprised at how close it can get. Once the water is just about to a boil, add in a half cup of baking soda, very slowly. Trust me, you want to go with a little bit at a time. Ask me how I know. Oh shit. Oh shit. Also to the baking soda water, I'm going to add in a special ingredient, dry malt extract. I'm assuming if you're making this recipe, you probably have some DME around. It really adds a great malty flavor and rich color to the outside of the pretzels. I'm using just a tablespoon, but if you don't have any DME, feel free to leave it out. Hopefully by now, the oven is preheated and the water is to a full boil. We can finally start baking these pretzels. So the reason I like to use the parchment paper is that now you can individually cut out the pretzels. Then taking the dough and the parchment, you can carefully dip it into the boiling water, and holding onto the parchment paper, the dough will slide right off, preserving your perfected shape. Now start the timer. 15 seconds on each side, max. Any longer than 30 seconds total, and you'll get a metallic-like taste, and the pretzels will get a little wrinkly. So when you hit 30 seconds, pull them out. A slotted spoon or a spider like this makes it easy. I recommend going 1 or 2 at a time at most, so you can better control how long they're in the water. My last tip here is to use a silicone baking mat for the baking process. For some reason, I found that aluminum foil and parchment just get stuck to the bottom of the pretzels. The silicone does the trick. The silicone parts are made for toys! And you can reuse them over and over again, so I'm sure you'll find another use for it. Once they're all out of the bath, the final step is to sprinkle them with some chunky salt, and if you want that final little flair, you can use a sharp knife or razor blade to make a slit in the pretzel for that iconic look. Now just toss it in the oven and set the timer for 12 minutes. And finally, after all that work, your delicious pretzels are ready. Man, do I love pretzels. And these are really fantastic. The spent grains give a nuttiness and an extra chew that makes these really stand out. And depending on the grain bill, you can get some pretty different results. Here's one I made using a lighter grain bill next to a dark grain bill. It really impacts the color, but also the dark one has some toasty tones that are really unique. These pretzels are perfect on their own, or even better dipped into some mustard or some homemade beer cheese. For a super quick and easy vegan beer cheese, I use this cashew nacho cheese dip from Trader Joe's, add some beer, and nuke it for a few seconds until it's warm. Delicious. If you wanted, you could double or triple this recipe, batch out a ton of pretzels, and then freeze them so you have soft pretzels on demand. Having pretzels on deck is never a bad thing. You have to try this recipe out, and if you do, let me know on Instagram at The Brew Show. Or feel free to try out one of my other recipes using spent grains. Thanks for watching, and happy brewing.